Good morning, Chairman Graham, Chairman Goss, members of these committees. Before I proceed with my statement, I have a long written statement which I would like to submit for the record, and I'm going to orally summarize it given the length of what we have here.
The full statement will appear in the record.
Thank you. But before I get into the main part of the statement, I do want to make clear to you and members of the committees that the information that's in this statement that we're going to present this morning has been cleared for public release. And as I think most of you know, much of the information that our staff has been working on over the last several months is obviously highly classified or has been highly classified. In the course of the last 2 months, we have been working with the intelligence community in a long and what I would call very arduous process to declassify much of the information that we have reviewed and that we believe is important to the public's understanding of why the intelligence community did not know of the September 11th attacks in advance. And I would point out that that process, we want to say for the record that we appreciate the many long hours that have been put into that process and what I believe for the most part has been very constructive cooperation with the executive branch on that process. A good number of professionals from the community have been in working groups and have gone over with our staff the details of this information to put it in a form where it could be released publicly. So we have made very good progress. But I do need to report that by late last night, we were able to resolve all but 2 issues about relevant information, 2 issues where we believe relevant information to the inquiry has not yet, despite our discussions with the executive branch, been declassified. And I want to make reference to those 2 issues because this statement has been prepared recognizing that those 2 areas remain classified. The 2 areas are any references to the intelligence community providing information to the President or the White House and the identity of and information on a key al-Qaeda leader involved in the September 11th attacks. According to the White House and the DCI, Director of Central Intelligence, the President's knowledge of intelligence information relevant to this inquiry remains classified even when the substance of that intelligence information has been declassified. With respect to the key al-Qaeda leader involved in the September 11th attacks, I am advised this morning that the White House and not the DCI has declined to declassify his identity despite an enormous volume of media reporting on this individual that has been out there for some time. The Joint Inquiry staff disagrees on both of those issues. We believe the public has an interest in this information and that public disclosure would not harm national security. However, as I believe you know, we do not have the independent authority to declassify intelligence information short of a lengthy procedure in the U.S. Congress. And we therefore have prepared this statement without detailed descriptions of our work in those 2 areas.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Romer.
Mr. Chairman, parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Romer.
Are the committees bound by the classification decisions made in these 2 instances?
It is our advice from staff director and counsel that we do not independently have the authority to declassify material, and therefore we are constrained by the decisions made by those who have that legal responsibility.
Further parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman. Is there a process then that either the committee or the Congress can undertake to challenge a classification decision such as that?
The answer is yes, and I would like, Ms. Hill alluded to the fact that there was such a process. I think she described it as being cumbersome. If you or our counsel might briefly explain what the option is to Congress.
Mr. Chairman, I am not an expert on the committee process. As I understand it, from speaking with the full committee counsel on this, it would require the Congress you'd have to have a vote. I'm not sure if it's the full Congress or the Senate or House, but there's a vote involved. You would have to run it through the Congress itself would have to override that classification decision. The reason that we did not originate this information in under the classification system, the agency that originates it makes the classification and declassifies it, and in this instance that would not be the Congress. So the only alternative would be to go through this what I am told is a lengthy, rather prolonged process. I should point out that right before the hearing this morning, I was advised by the White House that they were going to look at these two issues again, and they thought they would review it again within the next 48 hours. And I advised them that if their position changes, please to advise the committees, and we could always issue a supplemental statement on those two issues for the record. So my assumption is they are still reviewing it.
Final parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman. Does the chairman intend to have this committee consider or debate that kind of process? I'm not advocating that we challenge it at this point, but certainly understanding more from the Joint Inquiry staff that strongly disagrees with the decision as to why might be helpful in a deliberative sense for the committee.
I think there are two questions in your inquiry. One is whether we might consider utilizing the currently existing process in this or future instances in which we have a disagreement as to whether the information which is being withheld is in fact classified information, i.e. that it relates to the national security. Second question might be, as part of our final report, we might want to recommend to our colleagues a change in the law that relates to the congressional role in declassification so that it would be more available as an alternative in the event that there was a disagreement between Congress and an executive classifying agency.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I hope we do have a robust discussion of this, and I appreciate your patience.
Thank
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ms. Pelosi.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to join you in your earlier comments commending Eleanor Hill and Rick Cincagrane and the Joint Inquiry staff for their fine work. And I want to inquire if it's possible, just on this point that the parliamentary inquiry that Mr. Romer brought up, if Ms. Hill could just clarify, it says any reference to the intelligence community providing information to the President or the White House. Could you give us an example of that?
What we're referring to is obviously, and it's clear as you go through this statement that I'm about to present, that we are talking about a number of intelligence reports which we have had declassified through this process. And part of our role was not just looking at what was the reporting, but where the reporting went. And you will note that this statement includes many intelligence reports and in some instance says they were provided to senior government officials, I believe is the wording that's used, but there's no reference on any of the pages as to whether the President received that information or not. And we have been told that information, in other words, not what is in the report, but whether or not it went to the President, would be classified under this decision.
And when you say the President, you mean any President?
That's correct. And clearly, if you look at this statement, the reporting has dates on it, and the reporting is not just reporting that would have been under the current administration, but also reporting that was made under the prior administration. So, and the decision, in fairness, obviously, to the White House, it is not simply as to this sitting president, but as to any president.
Well, I would hope, Mr. Chairman, whoever is presiding here, that Mr. Romer's comments will be taken seriously by the chairman, and that the committee should consider their options under existing committee rules to make this information public, depending on how it goes in the next 48 hours. And I think that the White House should be aware that there is strong interest among many of us to have this be the most open process possible, in fairness to those families who are affected, that we heard from this morning, and really in the interest of a democratic society. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Chairman Graham had to step out for a moment. He'll be back, but I assure you, Ms. Pelosi, that he will be attentive to that request, as will I. Is it a point of inquiry or on this matter?
On this matter?
Mr. LaHood.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if the two chairmen could approach the White House within the next 48 hours, since they have this under consideration, to encourage them to make this information public and to relay the will of, I believe it's the will of the Joint Committee, that based on what our staff director has said, that this information is important to be released. And if it sounds like they're trying to make a political decision, and we would, the Joint Committee would encourage them to release the information. I say that because it's under consideration, and I think it's important, particularly given the testimony that was provided by the first two witnesses.